It is Sunday, the 11th. Yes, it's the 11th of May, 2025. Happy Mother's Day to people who are mothers. And I called my mother this morning. And, excuse me, my interview or my podcast with Viva Frei, it aired, I think, this morning. And this social media influencer stuff makes me like anxious, again, because it gets a lot of views. And I do not get those many views, or that many views rather, on my channel. And for a while, there was a reason for that I'm going to try to explain, because it was we didn't know what we were getting into. Like, he had not met me before. He didn't have any background information on me at all until within minutes of me going live with him. And so we really didn't know what direction it was going to go, right? And so I did have some pre-planned notes that I had ready if needed to share. But it was related to COVID, and it was related to Canadian politics and, international politics, and involvement with the USA as well. But I was ready to talk about that stuff. And but yeah, sometimes when there's questions asked about different things, I get just too, I guess, overloaded with information, and then what can I share, and what needs to be withheld for so many different reasons. And then it's just trying to unpack that, because again, I have a lot of information on a lot of different topics that we broadly brought up. But if you actually go onto my Rumble, especially since 2022, which is when I got on Rumble, I've been sharing a lot of this information there, along with references and things like that. And so it's fair. So if you're just new to me, I understand where it does seem like I'm not giving a lot of information in depth. Absolutely agree. And we even said that before it aired. And so there might be an invite back. I hope there is. And so, but we're going to focus. And I'm going to be able to go further in depth in specific conversations. For example, with COVID, there was so much even before that led to what was going on during the COVID era and the Freedom Convoy period, that if we go back on, maybe we can talk about that, or we can talk about things like 9/11, for example, because it's not something that I was even prepared to speak on yesterday. But if you look at older videos of mine, like, I've got probably dozens at this point of videos, and so I was thinking to myself, what would be the key things I can talk about regarding that, just to get some interest, without, again, talking about it for an hour, right? Because I brought in the controlled demolitions, explosions. I brought in some connections with who was possibly involved on the financial side, and possibly with the ones that were planting the controlled demolitions within the towers themselves, specifically towers 1 and 2 that I'm aware of. But I could further unpack that and talk about the hundreds of hours of footage that I've looked through, where there's possibly crisis actors involved, and then actual real heroes and civilians that were impacted during that day, during that whole period. And you're hearing explosions as they're going in and out of buildings. They're talking about multiple detonations. There's multiple injuries because of these explosions. Again, not from the floors that they're alleging it was on. It makes no sense. And then just so even that piece, there's just, even after 9/11 happened, so even 2001 up until now, 2025, there are heroes, in my opinion, who I've tried to use my platform to share what they're sharing. And chiefs of police, fire department chiefs that were involved in 9/11, that were there and lost a lot of people. These people have been speaking out literally for years, and on committees, on panels, they've hired experts that have put together so much information regarding, like I was saying too, about the metal, about the shaped charges, about the fact that within 2 weeks of these events happening, how the materials were sold to China. And how did we know that, right? So there were people that were sharing this information. There were heads of academic institutions that were actually complaining about this on the record. So not just an official documentation that I've shared, but also in conferences and doing things like I'm doing, trying to spread the message to people and saying that this happened, and that it took away their ability to look at and assess the materials, so that they can come to further conclusions regarding the melted concrete, the melted steel, all of these, so many things, and to look at thermite, right? Because there were materials and debris that were tested as well, where it's proven that there were there was explosions, multiple. And so NIST, I think it's the National Institute of Science and Technology, or something like that. But I've shared that within their reports, they intentionally excluded things like discussing Building 7, for example, or the explosions. And they remove the possibility of this being these being controlled demolitions, which again, there's so much scientific data out there and government data out there that have since completely, again, debunked that hit like NIST's assessment of that. And I've mentioned the guy's name and stuff like that and shared, again, from people that have PhDs, experts in engineering, multiple different engineering backgrounds, and chemists, physics, metallurgical people, explosive experts, people experts with videography and photography. Like there's so many people that have been actual experts, people that were heads of departments like the fire, police, etc. There's been so many lawyers involved in this trying to get facts out about 9/11 for many years. And so I'm trying to talk about this stuff, and because people need to know the truth at this point in time, because it's like, it's not just lest we forget. It's like, if we forget what happened, then then this can possibly happen in the future, and it has since then, and it's happened before that as well. And so like, there's a lot of things I'm talking about. And so anyway, so I could have talked more about 9/11, and so if it was a deeper conversation, I could have. So I'll leave it at that. See, I've already gone on for like 6 minutes. Yeah, so multiple topics covered, and that's fair. So some of the feedback was that again, there was not enough substance, and I totally agree. And like I do have like a little bit of an allergy. I don't know what it is, but like, so like my nose is like a little bit blocked. It's TMI, and so I'm struggling to breathe through my nose because I'm a nose breather. But I have never taken hard drugs in my life. That is a fact. And and so like the comment about me possibly like seeming like I'm on blow, like drug test me. I don't know. It was kind of funny, but anyways, it was a fair assessment, and I'm expecting some negative feedback anyways, just by virtue of the fact that there are people that it's their mission in life to sit in their parents' basements eating Cheetos and hiding behind some kind of a fake profile or anonymous profile and just troll anyone that they deem to be just not in alignment with their views and their values and their ideologies. And so I've had so many freaking videos and channels reported and deleted on me, or too many comments that were negative, and that they were, and it was like things that were reported by other people, and that also impacts channels. And so anyway, I wasn't surprised that Viva hadn't heard from me before, because I'm not an expert in this field, like speaking live on Rumble. But after I doxed myself in 2022, just before the Freedom Convoy, I'm already mostly blacklisted, and I understand why, right? Because like I would be seen as a liability at this point, because I have already shared my experiences and my skill sets during that period, because I thought it was really important. I felt like I had no choice at that point, because the Freedom Convoy landing in Ottawa, and who it was possibly involved, and how bad this could possibly get, and the people within my multiple different networks, what they were providing me, and then my assessment was like, this could possibly go bad, just like January 6th, or maybe even worse, of 2021. And so I was already tracking. See, if there's so many things I can go back to, but I had already been tracking what happened in January 6th, 2021, at a more in-depth perspective, or whatever you want to call it, than most people, right? Because again, that's part of my job. That was part of my interests. And so I also knew, or were tracking people that were doing like live streaming during the January 6th Freedom Convoys. And I've shared hundreds of hours worth of footage on with multiple different people that were either in the crowds, or crisis actors, or media, or fake media, or surveillance cameras. I've given a lot of footage that's a lot more elaborate and in detail than I've said this before, than most people have, right? And I was sharing that information because I thought it was important, because people were getting lied to, and people were getting targeted on January 6th, and then afterwards, and they were getting unlawfully arrested and targeted. There's been so much information coming out now in the last few months, but this is the backstory. This is stuff that I was sharing like at the time, and even beforehand, because of the networks that I was working in, that this is a possibility that this would happen, and that we have to look at key dates and how it aligns with the possibility of utilizing those events to exploit targets of opportunity and elicit emotional responses in people, or radicalize people, using psychological operations and so many other things in order to, again, like make it bigger than what, just to make it bigger, I guess. And so that they could justify further censorship and control measures, and justifying more freedoms being taken away from the U.S. And it would be for their safety, right? And so I got like that same narrative played out in Canada as well, like even in January of 2022, and I'm like, oh my god, are you freaking kidding me? Like there was just so many things going on back to back, right? Because we're literally in the middle of COVID during this time as well, and oh my god, and elections, wild. So many backstories on that as well. Um, but yeah, so like leading up to the Freedom Convoy within my networks, I was able to provide information about this possible convoy landing in Ottawa. Again, this was like a week in advance, and this is just a backstory. Like I'm not like there were a lot of other people that were tracking this as well, not just me. Just to be clear, I'm not like, oh, I was the only one. I'm not saying that, but but there were organizations that I had a direct line with that I was able to provide information to. This happens all the time, but it just so they could be aware and not caught off guard, because like that can also be dangerous, right? When you're going into something without any type of like prep beforehand, like mistakes can be made, right? And so it's just again, it's protocol, and and so it was still not getting out there, right? Like even like people that were like politicians or the experts that they had hired, the people that were speaking about this on all platforms, it was a lot of misinformation. And so we knew the narrative was going to be that it was like they were going to try to say that this was some kind of like right wing extremist group, these freedom convoy people, and pseudoscientists, seditionists, all of these things, and then also texting each other and laughing about possibly employing tanks on innocent civilians. They were, talking about like there was just a lot of conversations that were had that were being pushed as part of the narrative. And again, this was causing a lot more division and concern for people that were trying to make this peaceful, right? So when people within the security industries of all different layers, when they're hearing Marco Mendicino and David Lemeni having these conversations, they're like, are these guys fucking, like, no, respectfully, are these guys nuts? Like, and what is your background? You're like friggin' lawyer from Toronto. Like, oh wow, yeah, this gives you so much information and experience on international and domestic security. It's almost laughable. Anyway, and so it's not to take away, but I've talked about before how the breakdown of our House of Commons and the cabinet ministers and Senate, and how there are people within key positions right now and have been for many years. They keep on just getting cycled through different departments within cabinet. And we have 35 people within cabinet now because of Trudeau bumping those numbers up and very high salaries. But you have people like, and respectfully, I mean this, people of concern, if they're going to be, or if they're going to justify or not care or have concern for utilizing people within government and or crisis actors and civilian actors and private contractors, etc., to elicit emotional responses within people within the crowds and canalize them into certain areas and do the snatch and grabs and yeah, so all of those things that happen to exploit targets of opportunity. And it's frustrating that they use things like war monuments. It's very obvious, right? So like, where are you going to have more of an emotional response in people with like a relatively large demographic of people so that there can be more witnesses? It would be the capital of Canada, right? And so even before that, like I've said in videos where like, if I was going to want to exploit, anyways, I'm not going to get into like why we consider these things, because that's just whatever, fluff. But anyways, there was very obvious things that we were predicting could possibly happen. And what you should be doing is try to find ways to mitigate or avoid these things from happening for the safety of everyone, including people that have to respond to this stuff, and not escalate things. And so I've given examples where people doing their job in a bad way, not at all aligned with Canadian protocols, have caused radicalization, where it's even led to like that Toronto 18 incident. And I've unpacked that. But again, it's not to blade anyone, but like I just think that certain people need to be fired. They need to be investigated, and their links to with foreign, I would say, with foreign influencers, actors like WEF, for example, and the World Health Organization. These are like UN and 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 again, these are generally good organizations, but there are people from within that are not helping. So I've called out CSIS before. This is a great organization, and we absolutely need it. And there are really good people that are working within it. But then why is it that there's a lot of misinformation that's also being assessed from them and reported through them? Where's that breakdown? Um, and anyway, just we've got to question things. And then and again, this is not to slam the RCMP, because this is an amazing organization overall, but there are bad apples within. And again, this is every friggin' organization, by the way, even Tim Hortons, even Walmart. Like so again, it's expected. It's expected, but it should be monitored more, and not and these people should not be allowed to be in these positions for extended terms, right? So even with Doug Ford, for example, this is a politician, but why is it that he was rewarded with for corrupt behaviors and what I consider to be crimes? Why did he get elected again? And I know why, again, because of anyway, he exploited the opportunity when the iron was hot, when the conservatives were still popular in the polls. It was before like the major decline. And so and again, he's someone that is in an area where it's a safe, oh my God, a safe bet. And again, the people that he actually cares about or works with, they're not Canadian, and it's not for our best interest. It's for shareholders, stocks and stock holders or owners, whatever you want to call it, that transcend national sovereign boundaries. And so anyway, I'm going all over the place right now. Yeah, I can't talk about that. Word of mouth. Oh yeah, and so I just wanted to give some examples of like where I was able to establish myself, but not that's a bad way of saying it, but where I was able to, not because I had any agenda or anything like that, but I was because of areas I was involved in, groups I was involved in, work I was involved in. I was just able to gather a lot of information, and there's a lot of information that was being disseminated back and forth within so many different people from so many different organizations. And so because of that, I was able to have like a micro and a macro level understanding of certain events because of help, right? And so again, this is also something that it's fairly known. And so again, I'm not saying anything that's not open source, obvious. And yeah, so just wanted to get in here. So expanded my reach, and so so in that as well, if there's people that are no, I won't get into that. Elections. Yeah, so there was a lot of things I wanted to get into, and so yeah, so even with January 6th, excuse me, I was calling out. I say calling out. I hate saying that, but I was sharing data regarding Ray Epps and his involvement even before January 6th in trying to radicalize people in order to elicit emotional responses in people to affect behavior and shape behaviors. And so it's just frustrating. And then you had Harry Dunn and David Lazarus. These are law enforcement, and they were officers. And so when people watch them under oath lying, and there's even people that are veterans, first responder types, people that have served their country, like firefighter, like people that had like served their country in so many different ways. When they saw that they were getting targeted and arrested and jailed in solitary confinement, and not without bail opportunities, and it was just it's a lot for people that are the actual decent good people within these organizations to watch people like that, make them lose credibility and accountability within society and stuff like that. And then like the defund the police stuff, like there's just so much backlash that comes from people that do that. And I don't understand necessarily if they actually realize just how bad it was going to get, right? Like all that suffering, needless suffering because of liars. And there are people that were within Senate and within cabinet and House of Representatives that were outright involved in these events, and it was to exploit them in order to again push a different agenda that they wanted to push, and there's money involved in that as well. And so it's just unfortunate that this stuff it's just that these games that are played, like it is causing a lot of needless suffering and death. And so that's why I doxed myself in 2022. There were like these have gotten lethal in the past, and so I had also been aware of, just because again because of my work. It's nothing special. A lot of people do know about this, but I knew about the staged and planned coup in Ukraine for the 2014 period, and who was involved, and we're just like, what the fuck, guys? Like when you hear this stuff, you just like, you don't know them personally, you know what I mean, but it's like, what are you doing? Like, you're literally not helping your own people, and you're definitely not helping us. And yeah, so there were people in Ukraine uh, on behalf of NATO, even Canadian involvement. Again, this is open source information, and it was unfortunate that they had such a narrow view of what was going on and what led up to the reasons why they were there to begin with during this period. 2023, sorry, 2022 is when I was obviously when they were, but even before that. So again, it's just based on like information gathering and stuff like that. It was of concern to me that it could possibly get at those levels, because it was during COVID era. There was a lot of restrictions and lockdowns. It was really bad, especially in Ontario and Quebec, and it was and people were suffering here too. And so there were, and literally just after the friggin' emergency act was declared, friggin' Russia Ukraine, and I had said 10 days before on the record that there was the possibility of a world war. Sorry, not a world war. My goodness, back that up. Of a war with Russia and Ukraine, and that there was a peace deal on the table. And yeah, and so like I was sharing it out loud because I had already doxed myself, like I said, and I already knew that I was going to be blacklisted because of liabilities and stuff like that. But I knew that the people in these industries and these networks were not tracking what I was tracking. And so if they're not going to listen to me one way, like maybe there's other angles and stuff like that they can get the information, and maybe watch my videos or my social media platforms incognito, so that I'm not even aware that they're watching, in order to, and I know that some people are doing that, right? Like they can't look at my work publicly because it would make there be some kind of like a triangulation going on. But anyways, there's so many things I'm just over expanding that are needless. It's funny. And yeah, within that stage and plan coup, there were people within government that, based on my research, I could be wrong, but based on my data collection, is that there was government involvement, including American, and and so yeah, and so the possibility of that happening in Canada, literally where I am residing. I was residing at the time. I'm still in Ottawa, but more in the outskirts, and knowing that I had friends and family that were also involved in it, and they were peaceful, and it was just a bit of hope. And so like I was really nervous of how that could go, right? I'm like, okay, look at Bill Blair, you look at his past behavior to see future behaviors and trends, and you see that, there was a lot of overreach and concerns that have still not been addressed regarding the 2010 the G20 summit. Bill Blair was the chief of police at the time, and I don't know what his level of involvement was, but again, this is all stuff that happened under his watch, and nothing has been done to fix it or address it or hold people accountable. And so again, it's just one of those things. Do these people actually know what's going on within their ranks? And if they're not talking to people or listening to people that are credible sources, and they're just instead looking at CBC or a cabinet, it's just it's almost laughable. Anyway, it's not laughable at all. It's actually not funny. And yeah, there's so many layers, and so maybe I'll leave it at that. I don't know if there's going to be discussion. I don't know where it's going to go. So I hope you invites me on again. I'm talking about Viva Frei. But if anyone has any recommendations of what you think that I would be topics of interest, let me know. I'm going to look at more of the comments just to see how I can better project myself like on the mainstream, and go from there. So yeah, that's a bit about me on a Sunday. I've already been talking to Helen. Actually, I'll talk about that as well. Since before the interview, because I knew I was going to mention her anyways, but then afterwards as well. But I missed her call because again, my partner's kid and her partner are here for the weekend, and so I was out on the deck and we were talking about a whole bunch of things. But anyway, so I missed that call, but I did give her contact information with her permission to Viva Frei, and think I give the Ethos and Eris Discord page to Encryptus, and so I imagine he might be even, who knows, but like if he's interested in that stuff, there's a lot of information in there he can look at and review. And I think that is for updates. I was talking to Robert Krychek a little bit this morning from Rebel News, and he's someone that I had gone dark from in the last year or so, just because like I thought there was like some instigators on Rebel News that I just like. That were just making Rebel News look bad, and that's just like again my own opinion, right? And so like who cares, right? Like I'm just saying like why, and so I didn't necessarily agree with like again the agenda that was being pushed by specific people. Respectfully, they're great on a lot of things and they are being very helpful, but there are certain people that again they're making things worse, and they're making things worse for the conservatives especially, which at this point like I do think that we need to have conservative leadership and a different cabinet as well. So I don't care if they're liberal, conservative, NDP. I don't care what they are, but we just need new friggin' people within cabinet, and people that where there's some kind of scrutiny. That's not going to happen for this period, but where there's transparency and scrutiny, and when you have our Senate or some kind of a committee that actually questions the potential cabinet members and hold them to task if they've done things in the past that are questionable. So for example, Bill Blair, I would have a lot of questions about COVID. I would have there would just be so many questions to, anyway, and more, and Chrystia Freeland would be a lot of the same stuff, a lot of, and then it would be up to the Senate to decide. And with our Senate, they're called the Red Chamber. They don't really hold a lot of power or influence at this point, respectfully. Although I think the starting salary or the average salary is like $178,000 a friggin' year, and we have 105, and the U.S. has 100. Anyway, but there is like relatively like even geographical or regional representation of Senate members, and so at least there could be again like that's a check and balance that we can use to our benefit. That would make it where if someone has too much baggage, then they are not selected or appointed. It should be easy as that. There's a confirmation by Senate in the U.S., but and the nominations from the president, Donald Trump, for the U.S. So Mark Carney is going to be going and providing his list at some point to the Governor General, and she's going to rubber stamp it, like always happens. So again, it's not just Carney. Like every prime minister, when they appoint cabinet members, Governor General, generally there's never been an issue. It's always rubber stamped, right? And so, yeah. I'm just giving updates just for like also of like people that have reached out to me since the video aired. And I think for now, that might be it. Anyways, that's it for now. On that note, I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. And if you are interested in my work, I have a lot of videos that you can look through. And with whatever topic of interest you want to look at, you just do the search, obviously. And there's a lot out there. So have a wonderful day.